What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be checking out the brand new Samsung Galaxy A12. This is the successor to last year's A11, of course, and Samsung here has wasted no time at all in launching these new A series phones this year. We're just a couple weeks into 2021, and already we have a few phones coming out and rumored to launch very soon. But we're going to start with this one, and I'll show you what's new, what's been upgraded. But first things first, let's go ahead and unbox this thing and see what all comes inside the package. So you can see that while the phone and the model number have obviously changed, the package styling is very similar to what we saw on these A series phones last year. There's the bright blue A12 across the front, and if you want a different color, this device also does come in black, white, and red. For the configurations, you can get 32, 64, or 128 gigabytes of storage and 3, 4, or 6 gigs of RAM. So lots of different options here. And this one I have is the 64 gigabyte variant with 4 gigs of RAM. Cutting through the stickers and sliding off the lid, we're first greeted by that very familiar Samsung logo stamped on the outside of a small cardboard package. And inside, you'll find just a couple pieces of paperwork. Unfortunately, at least this unlocked version of the A12 does not come with an included clear case. Putting all that stuff to the side, the next thing we get is the phone itself, of course. And right away, I think you can see that while some things have remained the same, this A12 did get a refreshed look and some noticeable new features, which I'll go over in just a minute. Now, digging a little deeper inside the package, there are quite a few other accessories to talk about. First off, if you need it, the SIM ejector tool is attached to the very bottom of the box down there. Along with that, this phone also ships with the older style 3.5mm headphones. And although these aren't really the best, it's still nice that they're at least thrown in there. And last but not least, you also get a USB-A to USB-C charging cable and the USB wall plug. So with all that stuff out of the way, here is the new Samsung Galaxy A12 once again. And for those of you who maybe had or at least saw last year's A11, I think right away you can pick out quite a few changes with this new phone. If you aren't already familiar, this A12 is sort of the lowest end A series device in the lineup that's also a really big phone. This time around, it's a 6.5 inch device, while last year's A11 was 6.4 inches. And price-wise, at least right now, this device is going to retail for around $180, though that certainly depends on where you're located, when you're watching this, and also any potential deals or carrier discounts you might come across. If you are interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own, though, I'll have some links down below in the video description to where you can get this phone at its cheapest current prices. So check down there for some deals and discounts. Like I mentioned already, this A12 is a big phone, 6.5 inches, and you feel every bit of that in the hand. It's also surprisingly heavy, something I noticed almost immediately when I picked it up. However, this is still very much a budget device, and with that, I think you can pick out some things that certainly give that away. Up front, the display is surrounded by slim but still sort of noticeable bezels. Though there are some design changes here, we're back to the teardrop notch setup for the front-facing camera. Last year's A11 had a corner hole punch camera, so that's a little different. Across the bottom, though, the slightly larger bottom bezel has remained unchanged, and to me, the side bezels do look a little slimmer than last year, actually, which may contribute a little bit to the slightly larger display, though the entire device itself is a little larger altogether versus last year. Around back, I think it's easy to tell that the A12 has a plastic back cover, but we've got a completely new design here. Rather than a shiny, glossy plastic, this phone gets a new lined texture feel across about 75% of the back, and towards the bottom, it smooths out for whatever reason. This is kind of interesting. It gives you a tiny bit more grip, I think, but besides that, it's just aesthetic, and interestingly enough, those textured lines don't extend to the sides or edges of the phone. They sort of stop where the phone begins to curve. So an interesting sort of refresh with the design that at least makes the phone feel new. And the blue color, I think, here does look pretty nice. It almost has sort of a metallic-like finish to it as well. Taking a look around at everything else, on the left side of the phone, you've got your SIM and SD card tray, so expandable storage on this phone, which is great. On the right side, there's the volume buttons and power button, and this power button now doubles as your fingerprint sensor, which I'll demo in just a second. Down below, there's the headphone jack, USB-C charging port, and single speaker setup, which to me sounds sounds about the same as before. Here's a quick sample so you can get an idea. Around back, we've got a new quad lens camera setup, which I'll go more in depth with in just a moment as well. And up front, there's the small slit for the earpiece and the selfie camera I mentioned earlier. In the hand, the A12 definitely feels big. Like I said, it's a phone that I might suggest trying out first before you buy it, just to make sure that it works for you. And like I said, it's also quite heavy, and that's because this phone does get a big bump up in battery capacity too. You now have a 5,000 milliamp capacity battery inside this thing, which definitely contributes to the extra weight, but it's also a welcome addition in general for longevity. And I'm excited to see just how much life I can get out of this phone in day-to-day use. Now, I mentioned already that the fingerprint sensor has also been moved, and that, in my opinion, is a welcome change also. Rather than being placed on the back of the device, it's now incorporated into the side power button, kind of like the M51, which you guys know I really liked. And honestly, this is just a great move. The placement is solid, the sensor is fast, it's accurate. Nowadays, it's incredibly useful to just have it, so I'm glad they did keep it. And I'm really happy that they decided to take this route with this setup. It really just works well. In addition to the fingerprint sensor, this phone also does still have face unlock, and to me, at least out of the box here, it feels a little slower than maybe I would have liked. But honestly, with the awesome placement of the fingerprint sensor anyway, I can't complain too much. One way or another, you will be able to get into this phone rather quickly. The 6.5-inch display on the A12 is once again just a 720 resolution PLS IPS panel, this time at a resolution of 1600 by 720, packing in around 264 pixels per inch. And while I maybe would have liked to have seen a full 1080p display here, I sort of get it. It's still a budget phone. And to be honest, the viewing experience is pretty decent, all things considered. The big size of the display is obviously a big plus at this price point. It's super colorful also, it's very vibrant, not quite as sharp unfortunately since it is so big at this 720 resolution, but from any normal viewing distance you won't really notice too many pixels. Really the biggest drawback I see is with the viewing angles. This panel tends to get dark with any sort of off-axis viewing, which is kind of expected. All in all though, there's just no surprises here. If you've been working in this sub $200 market before, you already know what to expect with the displays, and this setup is exactly that, a decent but still very budget screen. Inside, the A12 actually has a pretty interesting array of specs. This year, it's powered by the MediaTek Helio P35 processor, which is a chipset we've seen before, and like I mentioned at the start of the video, it's gonna be paired with either 3, 4, or 6 gigs of RAM, depending on the configuration model you choose. Now, to be totally honest, while I don't generally have much to complain about with the P35 chipset itself, I thought it was a decent option on some budget phones last year. It is starting to become a little dated now. It first came out, I think, in December 2018, and having it on a new 2021 smartphone, especially from the likes of Samsung, I think leaves a little bit to be desired, though at least out of the box, the A12 does of course feel pretty quick. You get the Android 10 update here, and I even had an additional update waiting for me when I unboxed this already, which was nice. But the phone gets Samsung's One UI Core, which, while it isn't a huge software downgrade, I know some people may not be a fan of, considering you do miss out on a handful of Samsung related features. All in all though, I really think you just have to keep your expectations realistic here. While I'll certainly put this phone to the test in the coming days, I'm interested to see just how powerful and how capable it can be. This is a device that can certainly handle social media, at least YouTube, web browsing, but it probably just won't be a crazy multitasking powerhouse or high performance gaming device. It's still just a sub $200 device after all, but if you can understand that at least, I feel like there's still some potential here. Now, when it comes to the cameras, out of everything on this phone, it seems like this is where Samsung put the most amount of effort into, which is sort of interesting. Unfortunately, up front, it looks like you get about the same selfie camera as the A11 and previous budget A series these phones. It's just an 8 megapixel shooter, but around back, this new quad lens setup includes a really solid 48 megapixel main lens, 5 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, and 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now you guys already know I don't care too much about the macro lens. I think it's kind of unnecessary, but everything else has been upgraded here, and taking a few sample shots, this rear camera to me really looks solid. This portrait shot here offers a lot of detail, and the colors are super good too. It's very surprising and far better than the selfie camera for sure, which to me unfortunately just doesn't seem all that great. But I'm really looking forward to testing this new setup out now, because this might just be a surprisingly good camera for under $200. And I felt like on last year's A11, that's where things maybe were a bit lacking. So there you go. Those are my initial thoughts and first impressions on the new Samsung Galaxy A12. Like I said, I'm obviously really looking forward to putting this phone to the test in the coming days and seeing what all it can do. And there will be plenty more videos and comparisons featuring this phone coming soon. But what do you guys think about this device? Is it something you're maybe already considering at the start of the year? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.